Hello everyone! No review this week. I really stretched the meaning of mini in my recent What Else I Saw in March video. I covered 12 movies in one go, which was a little bit more than the norm, and I ended up talking about a few of those movies more thoroughly than I usually would. Some of them could have been solo reviews, but for various reasons I had decided against that. Anyway, it ended up being longer than intended and took 2 extra days to edit, which is why the video came out on Monday. And I was still working on last week's video when I was supposed to be almost finished writing this week's video, which I hadn't even picked a topic for yet. I just can't pull off a turnaround that fast, so there's no review this week. I'm going to recharge my creative battery, figure out what I'm in the mood to talk about, and come up with a plan not just for next week, but for the next month, because my video calendar is currently empty. Not for lack of ideas, thank you very much, but I don't need any suggestions, but I have been so caught up in what I was working on at the moment that I couldn't make up my mind about what I wanted to do in the future, and to make a video I really do have to, depending on what my topic is, I really do have to have it planned a couple weeks in advance. If I'm going to review a movie and I have to order it through the library, I need to have it ordered at least 2 weeks before I plan to post the video. So in addition to editing this video, I will be putting together a tentative plan for the next month, which will make the whole video making process much easier and more enjoyable for me. There's always room for an unplanned review in there. You never know when I'm going to watch a movie and just be flooded with thoughts and things that I want to talk about and share with you all, and if that happens, then that bumps out my plans for another week, and that's fine. That happened several times last year, and it was great. Those were some of my favorite reviews. They were all science fiction movies. But just in case, I like to have things planned ahead. So, that's what's going on. In the meantime, let me show you this pop-up book. I have done a few pop-up book reviews, videos, show and tell things in the past, the distant past. You can find them on the channel if you're interested. A couple of friends, who will remain anonymous, came across this pop-up book and sent it to me, suspecting that I might get a kick out of it, and they were absolutely right. I did. This is an Alfred Hitchcock-themed pop-up book. It is a collectible pop-up book, not a pop-up book intended for small children, for a couple reasons. It is fairly large in size, about 12 by 12 inches, I would say, and it features the artwork, the paper engineering of Kees Moerbeek. I hope I said that correctly. I apologize if I didn't. It's got 7 2-page spreads, which I'll give you a little peek at, which you'll see more fully in a few minutes when I show you the inside of the book. Each spread has a pop-up focal point, but also a smaller scale pop-up which recreates Hitchcock's director's cameos, and there are also a couple paragraphs of commentary about each film. Now, I've been trying to figure out how best to show you this book for a couple months now, for as long as it's been in my possession. And I finally figured out a solution that's probably not going to be as polished as what some other people with a more high-tech, fancy-schmancy setup would come up with. But this is the best I could do. Is it going to be a little bit wonky-donkey? Sure. But I'm not running a high-tech operation here, and I don't really want to, so this is what you're gonna get. So here's the book. It's got this fractured, kind of kaleidoscopic cover design with images hinting at the films featured inside. There's black fabric on the binding and the corners, but the rest of the cover has this shiny, smooth, silvery blue palette with a glossy finish. The first spread is for Hitchcock's 1942 film Saboteur, the centerpiece featuring the climactic scene on the Statue of Liberty, which is the most famous scene in the movie. The torch pops up, standing tall above the top of the book, so it was tricky to get it in the frame here. If you look closer, you can see Robert Cummings about to climb over the railing, and Norman Lloyd dangling down there. Here's a still of the fire scene in the beginning, the inciting incident, and there's Hitchcock's cameo. Turn the page, and here's a spread for 1958's Vertigo. There are a few things going on here, a lot to take in, and it's a little tricky to get a feel for it. Extending from the bottom of the left side to the top of the right is an overhead view of the roof of the Mission Chapel. And the centerpiece, of course, is a representation of the famous staircase shot from the scene where Jimmy Stewart's trying to get up to the bell tower in time, but his vertigo keeps holding him back. An in-camera effect known as a dolly zoom, also referred to as the vertigo effect, reveals to the audience what he's seeing as he looks down. You don't get quite the same cool effect here, but it's a neat recreation. Here's a still of Carlotta's grave, and then Hitchcock's cameo, where he passes outside the shipyard just as Jimmy Stewart approaches. Along the border, there is a film strip of stills of San Francisco Bay and the Golden Gate Bridge, representing that famous scene. And here's an imitation of the original poster design, which moves slightly to make it look like the lines are spinning or spiraling. The next spread is for 1960's Psycho. There's some really nice creativity here. Lots of iconic stuff in that film, so there was ample material to choose from. In the corner, next to a still of Mrs. Bates, is a still of the great overhead shot at the top of the stairs, and it opens to show Hitchcock's cameo wearing a cowboy hat outside Marion Crane's workplace. Popping up on the left side is the Bates house on the hill, a light in Mother's room, and Norman's silhouette standing outside. I love this. This might be my favorite part of the whole pop-up book. And on the right is a pop-up collage of images from the shower scene. It's interesting to me that instead of perhaps having a pop-up of Mother holding a knife with a tab that you can wiggle to create a stabbing motion, the artist did this. That scene is famous for the brevity of each shot. It's a rapid-fire onslaught of images that tricks the viewer into thinking you've seen something much more graphic than you really have to terrifying effect. And here we see many of those memorable images. And look who pops up to say hello, in color, as you turn the page. Here we have a spread for The Birds from 1963. The design is both simple and complicated. There's the Bodega Bay School in the background and the kids running on the left, and on the right, in the foreground, the crows, or blackbirds, pop off the page. There's also a small still of the gas station explosion with a clear plastic overlay painted with flames. Beside that, we see the dead man's legs. Thank goodness they didn't go with a shot of his pecked out eyes. And under the flap is Hitchcock coming out of the pet shop with a couple little dogs as Tippi Hedren goes in. There's another still from the gas station on the border. Next up is a spread for 1964's Marnie, which, hey, is the first one I haven't reviewed yet. What catches your attention first is the money that jumps forward at you. I hadn't noticed it at first, but the fingers on Marnie's hand got a little mangled. This is made out of paper. It's heavy cardstock, but it's still pliable, so you've got to be careful that the moving parts don't get bent. The fingers have a tendency to get caught on the section above unless you make sure you tuck them under. Yeah. Down in the corner is a still of the scene with the horse. What's his name? Forio? My mom knows. She always remembers the horse's name. Hey, Mom. What's the name of the horse in Marnie?
Forio.
I knew you would know.
Is this a test?
Yeah. And inside is the cameo where Hitchcock raises his eyebrow at the audience after the now dark-haired woman walks by. In the top corner is a still from a robbery scene. That's a great suspenseful moment. And in the center is a recreation of the stormy scene in Sean Connery's office where Tippi Hedren has an episode and a tree crashes through the window. There aren't a lot of exciting images to choose from this more psychological film, so I guess it makes sense to have chosen this, but it's still a little tricky. I'm a bit surprised that something like North by Northwest wasn't chosen as a subject for a pop-up spread. Also, notice the choice of symbolic red for the cardstock underneath. That's a nice subtle reference. The next spread is for 1966's Torn Curtain. The book definitely favors Hitchcock's later films. Again, I haven't reviewed this one yet, but I have seen it a few times. Not as many times as Marnie, though. On the left, we have a flat image from the long bus ride scene, and on the right, that's fairly self-explanatory. I don't remember Torn Curtain super well. It's not a favorite of mine, so I don't recall what's going on in a couple of these stills, but here's Hitchcock's cameo, bouncing a baby on his knee. Other people may try to imitate the director's cameo trademark, but they're never so droll as Hitchcock's. The real eye-catcher here, though, is the cutout from the farmhouse scene with the two people struggling to kill the man. That and the theater scene, I think, are the best parts of the movie. And the last spread is for 1972's Frenzy, Hitchcock's second-to-last film. This is one of a very small number of Hitchcock films that I have not seen. I wasn't allowed to watch it when I was younger, and now that I'm older, I just don't want to. I've avoided it for this long, and probably will continue to, because of its disturbing depiction of sexual violence. That's just something I don't care to see. Anyway, I'm not able to specifically identify these images, but the main pop-up is self-explanatory and quite vivid in its lines and coloring. Sticking up behind that is a newspaper headline about the serial killer the film revolves around. Down here we have a film still, and then Hitchcock's cameo and a crowd of spectators. And that's the end. We carefully close it up, and here's the back, continuing the shiny silver hue from the front cover, but now with a grape-colored background tone. For the most part, I love what was done to represent the most iconic scenes from these movies. I wish there were a couple more spreads, including a few of the older movies perhaps, but you can't have too many pages in a pop-up book, and it's a solid sample of Hitchcock's work, especially his later work, in addition to just being a great novelty item. So that's the book. I hope you enjoyed getting a peek at it, and many thanks to my friend who sent it and to his brother who found it. I will be back at it with a review of something still to be determined next week. Probably by the time this video goes up, I will know what I'm doing. So stay tuned, and as always, thanks for watching.